And I came across other prisoners who had, I think one guy had 50 kilos and he got 18 months in sentence. So my 8 years was huge, was totally political.
Totally excessive.
Yeah, you know, completely and utterly disproportionate to what, you know, someone who's not really been in trouble before with the law, first time, and most sentences, in fact, practically all sentences, are reduced by half. You serve half the time. They made me serve the full 3/4 of the sentence, 5 years and 4 months. Then they demanded that I pay £85,000 in confiscation. As I wasn't able, they made me serve an additional, the equivalent of 18 months. So I served another 9 months, making it a total of 6 years and 1 month. And then having been served that time and released from prison, money which I had saved for my children, nothing to do with cannabis, £15,000, they took from my children 5th of May 2011. So as I said, enough is enough and no more. I am saying either give me justice or give me death. That's what I'm telling you. And I will not obey any law that does not respect me as a human being or treat me equally and fairly as it ought to and as it does other people.
Okay.
Love.
Well, thanks very much, Caul, and good luck with your protest.
You're welcome, Stan. Thanks for being here again. When I discovered the connection between the two brothers, I wrote to Downing Street. Tony Blair was Prime Minister at the time, and he had the matter referred to the Lord Chancellor's Department. Yeah. They then had the audacity to write back to me, confirming what I've just told you in writing, but denying there being any possibility for bias or of bias, a potential for bias, and nothing was done about it. So
one of the constitutional problems is actually it's more Parliament that should be dealing with this than the government. The government really isn't necessarily in a position to deal with these issues, but Parliament is.
Well, that's excellent to know, because we'll come to that in just a moment. That's absolutely excellent to know. This is what I want people to hear, because for you know, people might think, oh, you're just talking out of your rear rather than an expectation. Because when I wrote to my MP about these issues, they said, I'm sorry. This is Linda. Well, I'm sorry that.
Then how are you? All right.
I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do. You need a solicitor. When you're my MP.
What it is when there are systemic problems, as we have in the family courts, with all the evidence being unreliable, it's actually up to Parliament to deal with that, rather than the government.
Yeah.
And people don't often make a distinction because so many things are about the government.
Sure.
People think, oh, it's the government, and in fact, it should be Parliament.
Well, no, I fully understand that and appreciate that, because this was why I kept sending letter after letter to my MP.
Yeah.
And the letter kept coming.
Well, they'll tend to write to the government, and the government will say there's not a problem, because the government never says there is a problem.
Right.
Because they're not really allowed to say.
Well, I wish that she'd even done that. My MP is Lynn Brown. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, it's all a bit full on at the moment.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Aberdeen.
Yeah. I'm starting to think due for release early release.
Yes, because of all our demonstrations and things.
Oh, that's quite good.
The governor came and asked him how long is all this going to go on for, and he said, oh, I don't know, it's down to my supporters.
Yeah.
But I should think we'll probably intensify, he said.
Oh, it's coming out.
Yeah. Well, I had a letter from him today, actually.
Yes. I was very pleased to be a letter from you.
Yeah, no, it's just that I need the paperwork. We can't do this here. All right, so you want to do it outside? It's all right. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, this is in the public domain here. That is on private land. So.
Sorry, Belinda.
Yes, okay.
If we could just pick up from where we were.
Where you were, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing about your case is one where it's like all of this. It's a matter of you've got certain letters here, but writing to the Queen. I'm not sure anything much ever happens from that these days, right? And what you have, if you have a systemic problem in terms of the way that the legal system is operating, that's an issue for Parliament. But then the first I've heard of your case is coming along here now today.
Okay,
so.
fair enough. And I, you know what? I always say that when someone takes this or become aware of it, a whole burden is placed on their shoulders, because it kind of challenges each individual's integrity, and I'm not saying we're challenging yours.
There are a lot of cases. I generally deal with things in the family division.
Right,
So
sure.
there are lots of issues floating around.
I mean, there are certain fundamental basics that you'll be aware of. The right to be heard, for instance. Now,
The old Latin is audi alteram partem.
right, well, my Latin isn't that good.
That means
but,
hear both sides.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And we have an adversarial system,
Yeah.
so that not one party is ever important. One moment, please. So what we will eventually get into is that I spent 6 years unlawfully locked up in prison without having right of access to court by way of appeal or even habeas corpus.
Yeah.
That's not possible.
Well, no, the thing is, you're supposed. It's a question. You can always make an application. for habeas
Absolutely.
corpus.
Yeah, we have a right of appeal. We may not necessarily, and I want to make this clear, we may not necessarily have grounds of appeal, but one has the right to come into court.
Well, there's a process for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, having been wrongfully convicted and then filed my application seeking permission to appeal, the first judge refused it. I renewed the application to have an oral hearing in court, which is my right, everyone's right. The judiciary, or the judges at the time, they ordered, they refused me legal aid, so I could not afford a solicitor, and then they ordered the prison governor not to produce me for my hearing. So fundamentally...
What evidence do you have of them telling the prison governor not to produce you?
Oh, because I've got the facts. Yeah, I've got the facts that they sent through. Even when I issued this, I finally, a couple of months before my release, I issued an application seeking a writ of habeas corpus, which I believe is a matter which must be heard. The prison governor assured me as long as I get a hearing date, even if he's on his day off, he's going to come in to make sure I'm produced in court. The evening before I was due, Lord Justice Thomas faxed through to the prison, or someone on his behalf in his name, ordering the prison governor again not to produce me in court. That is a documented fact. Now, that was clearly unlawful. They held me in prison. I mean, we know...
But I need to see the paperwork.
Oh, it would be my pleasure. If you would like to see them, it would be my absolute pleasure.
But you also need to work through your... Lynn Brown's your own MP. So.
Yeah, I know that. But we're coming back to that. Each time I wrote to her saying, look, I'm not asking you to be my lawyer. I want you to represent me as an MP. And I have been denied my most fundamental rights, the protection of my liberty, the right to be heard. And she's written back to me, look, I'm not a lawyer. You need a lawyer.
But there are areas where Parliament can deal with them.
Absolutely.
Although it doesn't generally look at individual cases, but it can look at individual cases.
Yeah.
And there are circumstances under which it should look at individual cases. I cannot say whether yours is one or not. But,
you know what? I just appreciate the honesty. First and foremost, accepting and acknowledging that it's a person's fundamental right to be heard. That an accused has the right to be heard, and not only to be heard, but to hear the allegation of whatever has been said about them. That's what you make the laws in Parliament. Lynn is a part of that, making laws, so she must understand when those laws are being broken. Yeah, and fundamentally, if someone has been denied that right to be heard, then there's nothing for a lawyer to work out. All you need is proof that you had an application to be heard in court, or you've been accused of something, and that you didn't get your right to be heard.
Let's have a look at the paperwork on it.
Oh,
But it may be best to have a quick word with Lynn, make sure she's happy that you're talking to me.
Well, please do. I mean, I'm kind of fed up with banging my head against the wall there. I asked to see her at a surgery. She says she doesn't see much point in it.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean...
I think it's never too late for justice, is it?
No, never. Justice never dies. It never sleeps. There's always a demand for justice. And the worst thing is, as I said, this was all part of trying to cover up the death of a 14-month-old baby who died in hospital from dehydration, from being kept in casualty for 5 hours without fluids. Yeah, I mean, can it get any worse? And then to send the grieving father to prison for having committed no crime. we talked about disproportionate or proportionate when you mentioned Robert. I deliberately broke the law. I accept in defiance because I tried. All other avenues, lawful avenues to get into court, but they kept slamming the doors in my face. So I deliberately broke the law to get into court, to get before a jury, to say the only reason I did this is because of this. That isn't a new phenomenon created by me.
No.
It's normal.
It's been done before.
It's been done before. Thank you very much. Now, having got into court before a jury, a judge told that jury there is no defense of justification in English law. And ironically, he finished that there is no defense. Again, I have the evidence of this. I've got the transcript. That there is no defense of justification despite self-defense, necessity, duress, etc. These are all defensive.
Obviously, it's a long and complex story which starts a long time ago. And,
right.
You know.
However, he finally said to them, for the reasons he has put forward, he seeks an acquittal. Because if he's right, no court or jury can stop him or convict him of anything. And he's right about that. Because Article 7 of the Human Rights Act, I'm not preaching to you, forgive me, guarantees no punishment without law. No lawbreaker can be a law enforcer. And the evidence that you're asking to see exposes that the judiciary is in violation of the law, and in reality, dangerously, are not in a position to sit in judgment of others. That is the reality of what they've done. Now, the letter to Buckingham Palace, the response from the Queen there, back in '98, clearly stated that the Queen had instructed that these complaints be handled or passed directly to Derry Irvine, I beg your pardon, who was the Lord Chancellor at the time, and he did nothing and allowed...
the government.
No, I understand.
I explained to you that we actually have three estates of the Constitution. We have Parliament, legislature, we have the government, and we have the judiciary. And there is actually a distinction between Parliament and the government. And it's important to understand that. And those people who are ministers in the government are constrained in what they can do. Parliament can look at individual cases. Ministers really can't. They should. Some things are so absurd they should look at them. But constitutionally they're not supposed to.
Who has oversight of the judiciary in the
Parliament.
Right.
Well, here we are then.
Well, there you go. But the answers that keep coming back is you cannot interfere with...
John, I'm so glad you're here.
I'm sorry I had to come early, but I've also got to go early, that's the thing. So.
Cannot interfere with the judiciary is independent and cannot interfere with the judicial independence. And sadly, but we know just by gut common sense feeling that somebody must be able to look at
Parliament.
Exactly.
But there are processes in Parliament. Just Parliament hasn't tended to do that. It did it over 100 years ago, quite regularly. Parliament has the power to remove judges if Parliament sees fit.
Absolutely. So, you know what I'm going to do? Which constituency are you?
Birmingham Yardley.
I'm going to move to Birmingham so that you can be my MP.
I could take this, but it doesn't. This is just sort of people.
It's just. It's just. I mean, the documented evidence. Through Sabine, we are. If you're interested, genuinely interested.
There are so many things going on. I have looked at a number of individual cases, which, if you look at the problem with expert evidence in the courts, right, that's a very serious problem. And it comes down, in part, they've accepted the idea that having one expert appointed by both parties gives balance, when in fact it doesn't. And we don't have systems in the UK like the Dover system, which tracks what's the scientific reliability of evidence. And if you look at the case which was last week, the vitamin D case, do you remember that one? That one. Well, I know a number of cases where people have lost their children on the basis of wrongful evidence.
Well, we've got one in the courts today. It's in the appeal court.
Right.
This case. What happened?
Did they get adjourned?
It's a shambles. We can't get her here.
They can't get her here?
Well, they haven't got her here. She's supposed to be here at 2, but she's coming at 4. Because she wasn't, it wasn't sort of set up in the prison. There's a problem with the wheelchairs, so we should change the courts.
Anyway, I'm going to have to dash back to Parliament now, so I'm sorry about coming early.
These nonsense letters, nothing I can do, you need a lawyer.
100 years ago they were doing a lot in Parliament about this sort of thing. It's time to have a movement to get the judiciary cleaned up again, isn't it?
Absolutely.
If you just let it you know,
Yeah.
flourish by itself, it'll be
Yeah. I mean, these guys, they've just got too much power and no restraint on that power.
Don't give up the fight, don't give up the fight.
Now this is what I got to say in all I've been saying, you know. It's when we be get up, and stand up for your right. Because life is, you know, what it is. Let's get steady, bro.
Get up, stand up for your right.